Hello my lovelies and welcome to the Clueless Fangirl YouTube channel. I create content like this, lore videos, live streams and podcasts on Lord of the Ring or rather Tolkien's works on a weekly basis. If you want to follow me on social media, all links are in the description of this video. Enjoy! Hello my lovelies. So, we have talked in much detail about the first age of Arda. Let's now talk about the beginning of time and everything that went down before the years of the sun, aka the first age and the following years. So, this is a video about the beginning of time of Arda and the creation myth of Tolkien and the years of the lamps. I mentioned in my first age video, time unfortunately is not measured in just one way in Tolkien's works, and when we talk about the creation of Arda and everything until the sun rises and mankind awakes, we measure in Valiant years. One Valiant year is roughly 9,582 years of the sun. So the time span before men awake is very, very long compared to the ages that follow. Let's start with the beginning, the creation of Arda, basically Tolkien's creation myth. There was one god, and his name was J.R.R. What I always find interesting is that Tolkien describes, although being Christian, the creation of the world by a theme that was woven and picked up by the spirits and angelic beings. So it was not him that said, "And here is the world, go out and mingle and have fun." The creation of Arda was a teamwork, and not only good was created, and not everything went down peacefully as you might imagine. Interwoven in the song was mistrust and domination, power, lust and hunger. So even the beginning of the world was not just good and, let's say, boring, quite the opposite. And I always do feel that here it all started with the downfall. The way the world was created foreshadowed its doom. So Tolkien was saying where there is good, there has to be evil. I mean, if not for Melkor, basically the story could have ended there, cause boring. So, thank you Melkor. Jokes aside, I love that he's not dumping a copy of the Christian creation myth on us, but rather makes it real, and it looks like hard work and nothing plays out as planned. So it's not really perfect, but it is what it is. And the beginning of the world looks like it looks, and they have to deal with it, everybody in it. I also feel that just like in real life, when we have to face a problem or face something not planned, we have to adjust, think outside of the box, and therefore the outcome is even better than the original plan. Because we had to think twice, change plans, adapt, and work even harder. It's a bit like in Tolkien's creation myth. The world would have been another place and maybe way less interesting if not for Melkor's discord. The Ainur had to work even harder, be more creative to forge the world as we know it. That's what always made this world he creates for us so intriguing, I guess, because it's not perfect and very similar to the world we live in, with all the good, but also the evil. Also, music and songs are a recurring theme in Tolkien's works, and they transport stories and tell us about events in the past, but are also an element of teaching us more about a character itself. For example, Tom Bombadil sings about himself. Sauron and Fingolfin get into a duel of power. The Noldor blow their horns to make their coming to Middle-earth known, and Aragorn sings about the story of his ancestors and their love, Beren and Luthien. So it not only starts with a song, the music kind of accompanies us throughout all the history. A beautiful literary tool, if you ask me. But enough of songs now. After J.R.R. created the Ainur and the music of the Ainur, Arda, the world, is created. And if you only know the Lord of the Ring movies or books, the world was shaped very different when it was created. In the Lord of the Ring books and movies, it looks completely different than it did in the beginning of time, and I will later explain why. But first, a very important fact about the beginning of time and the creation myth is the Christian aspect of it. Unlike his friend and fellow author C.S. Lewis, Tolkien did not want to convert or convince anyone of Christianity. He also didn't want to copy the Bible or Gospels. In fact, especially in his later works as the Lord of the Ring books, a real God figure is completely missing. And the Christian aspect is even more hidden than it is in the Silmarillion, I find, which at least has a creator and God to start with. In a letter to a priest, Tolkien once even stated he erased on purpose obvious religious themes from the Lord of the Ring books, so the reader can discover the motives himself and learn about friendship and sacrifices, resurrection, good deeds, and much more. Basically, Christian beliefs. And talking about the creation myth, let's take a closer look at the word creation, which is a very important theme in Christianity, and the way Tolkien plays it out, especially in the Silmarillion and the early days of Arda, is very interesting. We all know God is a creator. Arrow is a creator. He created the Ainur, and together they created the world. Arrow also created other beings that then also created. Fëanor created the Silmarils. Elves create languages, fortresses, swords, and much more. The dwarves create halls and jewels, men create cities, ships, and so on. You get the idea. According to Christianity, we are made in God's image, right? And if he creates, obviously we create as well. Tolkien calls this the sub-creators. So you see, obviously Tolkien's world is a Christian world, at least partly. But it is not as obvious as, for example, the Chronicles of Narnia. And he definitely didn't want to copy any Christian text. He took what he thought interesting and important from world literature, from myth, fairy tales, from history, and yes, the Bible. But he spun his own story and created his own world. I guess that's why even if we know this is not real and elves probably don't really exist, it could be true at last. After all, Tolkien wanted to create a mythology for England, so things we read could be true, right? Just like the Bible. Tolkien called this kind of a story a secondary belief. A primary belief is a story we know is true. You read something and you know it's true. You heard it on the news, you don't doubt it. A secondary belief is a story that is so well told it's true for you, or could be true. And both go for the Christian Gospels, the Bible, ancient myth, and also Tolkien stories. So overall, I guess, yes, it can be read as a Christian story. Although I personally never saw it as just a Christian story. Yes, we have a resurrection with Gandalf. Yes, we have themes like sacrifice, charity, pity, and much more. But for me, that is not only Christian, and especially the fight good versus evil, which is one of the main themes for me, has been there since basically the beginning of time. So has greed and improvement, love and hate. I think everyone can make up their own mind, and that is actually the real beauty of Tolkien's world. Make a choice, pick what you want, and take what you need and want from it. But back to our story now. So after the creation, the Ainur enter Arda and become the Valar and the Maya. I'm not going into depth about them in this video, but it is important to know there are 14 of the Valar and countless Maya. The names of the 14 Valar, which are besides Eru, the most powerful beings in Arda, way more powerful than the lesser ranked Maya, are Manwe, Ulmo, Aule, Orome, Mandos, Lorien, and Tulkas. Those are the 7 male Valar, and then there were 7 female Valar: Varda, Yavanna, Nienna, Este, Baire, Mana, and Nessa. All of the Valar stand for certain things like strength, craftsmanship, sorrow, etc. And they have many more names beside these ones. But again, that's a topic for another video. In general, I feel they are very similar to Greek and Roman gods, not only in their appearance they choose, but the way Tolkien describes them and for what they stand. So, in a monotheistic world where there is one god that created the earth, we also have polytheistic demigods or maybe angels, which is never fully clear to me. Interesting, if you ask me, and that is something that distinguishes him again from authors of his time like C.S. Lewis. I always found the Chronicles of Narnia, for example, are basically a fantasy retelling of the Bible, but don't quote me on that. Back to our timeline. The Valar went to Arda and tried to shape it, give it rivers and mountains, while Melkor, being Melkor, basically destroyed everything the Valar created. In the end, it kind of became a battle of Melkor versus the other Valar over the dominion of Arda, which Melkor claimed as his. But Melkor stood not alone. He convinced some of the Maya to ally with him, and so the Balrogs, Sauron and others switched sides and became followers of Melkor. After thousands of years and 1,499 valiant years, Turkas who did hear from Melkor's deeds came to Arda. Melkor, who I would say was the mightiest of the Valar and most powerful, was actually afraid of Turkas' strength and fled before the Valar could confront him, and he fled beyond the walls of the night. Together the Valar and the Maya polished off Arda, and the two lamps that illuminated all of Arda were created. With the light of the vegetation Yavanna earlier did plant came to life. That time was later called the Spring of Arda. From now on, the time span is called the Years of the Lamps. The two lamps were placed on two great towers made by Aule. The lamp in the north was named Helkar, and the one in the south was named Ringil. Both names reoccur in later times, as it happens so often in Tolkien's Legendarium. Melkor didn't stay hidden long, and coming back, first thing he did was destroying the two lamps. And with the two lamps gone, Arda fell into darkness again, much to Melkor's and his allies' taste. The Valar hesitated in recreating what Melkor destroyed with the two lamps falling, because they didn't exactly know the time Eru's firstborn, the elves, would awake, and they did not want to start another war over the dominion of Arda in fear it could interfere with the coming and awakening of the elves. Eru did not tell them when and where his first and second-born children will awake, and so they went back to Valinor instead and created the two trees, which, like the lamps before them, were a pair of gold and silver light, Laurelin and Telperion. That light lightened the continent from then on, and last for a while after all. There was still Melkor. 3,500 valiant years have passed before the Valar went to Valinor and created the trees. It is very interesting how Tolkien figured out a time system depending on those two trees. So a valiant day in the year of the trees had 12 valiant hours. One day, 12 valiant hours. In hour 1, the day begins and Telperion is blooming already. In hour 3, Telperion reaches his highest bloom. Hour 6, Laurelin begins to bloom and the light of the two trees can be seen at the same time. Telperion then ceases. In hour 7, Laurelin begins to bloom, while Telperion's light can still be seen partly. In hour 9, surprise, Laurelin reaches his greatest bloom, and finally in hour 12, Telperion begins to bloom again, and again both lights can be seen and are mingled together. Interesting, if you ask me, because we know Tolkien actually planned his tale as a great tale for England, and that this world is basically our world just a long time ago. And as the two trees are basically the forefathers of our sun and moon, who are then created by the Valar in the first age of the last fruits of those trees. But I have all of that info in my first age video if you're interested. Back to our friend Melkor, who in the meantime did build his strongholds Utumno and Angmant around the year 3,400 in valiant years. Both were up far north of the continent. Utumno especially was carved deep into the earth with tunnel systems so that the light of the lamps and later the trees had no power there. Melkor gathered all evil powers of the world in his fortress and also bred the race of the orcs from elves he captured after they finally awoke. But he also bred trolls, to mock Yavanna's creation of the Ents and many other foul beings, where there Balrogs, orcs, cruel spirits, dragons and wolves roamed the halls and of both fortresses. Sounds like a place for me. Just kidding, obviously. His second fortress, with its commander Sauron, yes, that Sauron, was the before mentioned Angband, which actually means iron prison. Again, sounds lovely, does it not? Angband was built under the three volcanic mountains of Thangorodrim, the then largest mountain in Middle-earth. The description we get is a bit similar to Sauron's later fortress Barad-dûr and the closed Mount Doom with its volcano. From the towers on Thangorodrim, Melkor did often cloud the skies, especially before battles, so his armies didn't have to deal with the light of the lamps or the later occurring sun, which all seemed to kind of weaken the evil armies. Both fortresses were destroyed by the armies of the Valar in the War of Wrath against Morgoth. Angband wasn't fully destroyed, and many of Morgoth's servants, including Balrogs, could flee and hide in the tunnel systems of Angband. But enough on fortresses for now. Let me know if you would be interested in a video about the fortresses in general, as much as I love the swords, and yes, a video on swords is coming. And or the backstory of the swords. I do love the stories of the strongholds as well. And basically with this, the Year of the Lamps ended. The following age is the Years of the Trees. And you can find it in my next video on that topic. Thank you for listening, my lovelies. Have a great day. Have a great dent and day. Until the next one, your Clueless Fangirl.